Welcome back, guys. Next up on our previews, we have the Central Division in the NL. Sorry, I got a little throat thing there going on. You have the Central. This division, just like the AL Central, has historically been the worst one in the NL. Not even that's that bad. It's just the East and the West have both been so strong every single season. The Central has really just been Pittsburgh and St. Louis battling it out. Milwaukee did win the title. I think that one year I played them in the playoffs in like 22, but fell off a little bit in the last couple of years with an aging team. So it'll be interesting to see this year if we can be a little different. I know the Cincinnati Reds have gotten a lot better since the early 2020s. Each year we've been kind of waiting for them to break out, but now they have a legitimate lineup that just has a lot of power compared to years past. They've always struggled just producing runs with a young team. But this year they look like they shouldn't have a problem with Cruz Newman turning into one of the best bats in baseball. I think the preseason predictions had him well over 40 home runs. Chris Elliott looks like he might crack this roster. Chris Elliott, even if he doesn't, I'm sure he'll be up at some point. Looks like one of the best bats in the league. He is an absolute monster. Third overall pick of the draft. One of the best bats. I think out of the seven drafts so far in TLG, probably the best outfield bat I've seen. Just an absolute freak profile, and he's lived right up to it, getting up to a 65 contact rating already. But the ceiling on him at 75 contact, 60 power, with a bunch of athleticism, can play a really good corner defense. 65 speed, fly ball guy. Just such high avoid K and contact. He should never hit under like 280. He should hit like 30 bombs a year. So should be one of the premier players in the league. One of my favorite prospects ever in the draft. The highest rated bat I've ever graded based on my rating system on Excel. I think I had him at like the best percentile of any draft so far. So just I think Peters was right up there, but just Elliott gets a bump because he's a positional player. Peters was a first baseman, the Yankees guy. Elliott just looks like an absolute freak. So the combination of all those guys, a couple of really good infield guys. Brady House has reached all his ceilings already at the age of 23. He looks like a really solid third baseman. And then you got a bunch of young guys in the infield here. Don't have anyone in this entire lineup over 29 years old. Still got a lot of youth, but they still have a lot of these young guys have already reached their potentials. Like Raul Quinos is here, had a huge season last year, hit 292, played about 68 games, must have had a big injury there. Should, if he could stay healthy for a full season, be one of the best left fielders in baseball. So having him and Newman in the corners and LA too is just got a wealth of talent there. Really like Judson Fabian too, so might have to end up trading one of those guys. Almost too good there with all those bats. Need somebody to play center field there, but I don't know. LA could probably survive in center field, even though he's not quite defensively. A center fielder could be good enough with a bat to make up for it there and give you some innings in center field. But it really looks like with the best shortstop in baseball defensively, him and Reyes in Toronto are just so elite there. Should be a really solid defense still, even if you aren't quite as good defensively in the outfield. Those bats make up for it. Should produce a lot of runs there. I love this lineup. Just an absolute monster power hitting lineup. Probably just missing a little bit of juice out of first base there. I think Brandon Busser and those guys don't quite have a lot of power at first base. So that's the one thing I think if they could make a move to bring in a veteran first baseman there, if they're competing at the deadline, they could be really nasty. Might be the final piece they need there. And pitching wise, they brought in a really nice pitcher in Corbin Burns. They brought him in from Arizona, and then he jumped up in his contact and his movement at the age of 32, as you can see here in that last scouting report, and his stamina went up. So for whatever reason, he's just rediscovered himself at the age of 32 and might produce a huge season with those ratings now. He looks really nasty and could be like a 4-WAR pitcher. John, been an absolute stud, led the NL in innings last year, 221, had a huge season last year and even better season the year before. Just been incredible. Turned into one of the premier players in TLG. So really solid 1-2 punch out of those guys. And Isaac Ayton has started to live up to his potentials. He was one of those rares. If you're not a believer in that 20 changeup, he was one of those 20-70 changeup guys that actually turned out. Looks like it'll be pretty close to that 70 rating in a year or two there if he can keep the momentum going with that changeup. So I know a lot of people say they never trust those young changeups, young guys with those really low changeups, but he's a guy that actually proved he could get to a major league quality changeup, which is really cool. So love to see it. Really, really nice top three there. And then Naughton's a really, really solid lefty to kind of round out that rotation. Gives them that veteran presence with the high control, kind of mix it up a little bit. Kind of have two really good lefties there in Naughton and Morejon, which is really exciting. Not too many starting rotations have two really good lefties like that. And then it's kind of rounded out here by Parker, another control guy that throws pretty hard, has really good two pitches. Probably struggles quite a bit against lefties here. Lefty bats with only 40 stuff against lefties because the fastball slider guys aren't very good against um, the guys on the opposite side of the plate. So it'll be a little tough for him to get lefties out, but if you're playing a right heavy lineup, he should be pretty solid. So it'll be interesting to see if he can give him a solid season there. But those top four are definitely really solid there. I think they could probably upgrade Parker a little bit if they were competing pretty well. All those guys killed it in the preseason. As you see, they all had like 20 innings pitched and like ridiculously low ERAs. Corbin Burns at 0.9, Naughton. So just a crazy preseason out of all those guys, spring training. Love to see it. So that team's looking really solid. Next up, we have the St. Louis Cardinals, who are probably one of the most exciting teams in baseball. They brought in a 75 range center fielder, an Asian guy from South Korea there, just an absolute freak defensively. Has a captain mentality, pretty average bat. I thought his contact's a little higher, so it actually went down. So hopefully, I think it probably just bounced between 40 and 45 from the looks of it. So hopefully he can hit like over 200 there. As long as he can hit like 220 with that kind of defense, he should be a solid player. Gave him a big contract there. Just with how good his defense is, they really value that in St. Louis. Huge center field there. You get Torkelson in the corner with Dahl. Dahl was a big acquisition there, really helps. Bringing along the veteran bat there with some nice contact and power should really help with Carrier there, who's a righty bat that struggles against the other side of the plate there against righty pitchers. So should be maybe a platoon situation there with Dahl and Carrier until Carrier can kind of start to live up to those ratings a little bit. Should be like a 30 home run guy in his prime there. Just a really nasty profile. Miranda's a guy I'm expecting to take one of the biggest jumps in baseball. His avoid K and I have both gone up considerably in the last year. So now that he's up to his potentials, I think he has a chance to be like a 50 home run guy. Just an absolute boomstick of a bat there. Really, really exciting ceiling out of him. CJ Abrams was one of the biggest acquisitions this entire TLG in the offseason. Really talented dude to bring over there in November from the Padres there. So I think he could have a huge season. That contact gap power plays so well in St. Louis. I think he could have a huge season hitting and could maybe have a chance to lead the NL in doubles and triples. Really solid gap power out of him. I love that profile. Tyler Freeman's another guy who gives you a lot at second base. So pitching wise, we've talked about them a lot in other videos. Just a really nasty combination. Another team with two good lefties, Vasquez and Snell, just like Cincinnati has those two nice lefties. Another team with two really good lefty starting arms, and then they combine that with the three high-powered righty arms, Baez, Cedeno, and Loki, all pretty heavy strikeout guys. So this team's going to strike out a ton of batters. Blake Snell's a huge strikeout guy too, so wouldn't be surprised if this team was first place in strikeouts in the NL. And then they don't let up a lot of home runs in that stadium. So the combination of striking a ton of batters out and lacking home runs is going to bring them to a lot of wins. So as long as they can keep the controls not super high, they have one or two guys with 60, but the other guys with 45 and 50. So they can avoid walking a lot of guys. They should be really successful and really good chance to be top 5 in the NL and all the pitching ratings with how good that lineup is. McClellan's a really good lefty in the bullpen too. So a lot of nice lefty arms on that team. Almost too many in the bullpen there. Might have to bring up another righty. Got ridiculous amount of lefties in this lineup. So it should be absolutely deadly against the power lefty bats of the world. And striking those guys out. So really nice squad they put together with a lot of balance, a lot of home run power, a lot of good pitching, a lot of defense. One of the better, well-rounded teams in the entire league. Pittsburgh, obviously, is the same as always, just a really nice pitching rotation put together here by Alex. Same three guys heading those top 3 spots there in Flaherty, Beaver, and Abreu. And then Asa Lacy is number 4. So should be yet again another elite pitching squad. They have a really nice assortment of arms there. Leone Rodriguez turned into one of the best relievers in baseball. And then they have a couple nice other arms there. They brought in Bednar and free agency for a pretty cheap deal here. He looks like some major movement there. So yet another nice arm that should be good against the letting up home runs. Really nice rotation like always. And then hitting wise, they're pretty much bringing back the same team. They brought back Calhoun, that DH spot. You got Machado there at shortstop, Cabrian Haynes. The big bat here I really like in the Rule 5 was they brought in Ramirez, so it'll be interesting to see if they keep him around. Has a lot of crazy contact and gap power. So in Pittsburgh, he could hit a ton of doubles and hit like over 300. Won't walk a lot or hit home runs, but if he can just make a ton of contact in that stadium, play like an average defense, he should be a pretty valuable player. He's going to be tough to get too many games at third base, so they have so much defense out of Hayes and a couple of those other guys. Might be able to move Hayes to second base or shortstop a little bit, get some innings out of Caesar there, so it'll be interesting to see if they hold on to him. I really like their team. Just pretty much the same starting nine as last year, which was a really good team. Really explode in the second half for a huge season. So them and St. Louis are should be the same battle as the last couple of years. Are really competitive with each other. Now that St. Louis has improved their roster so much, should be a really good battle there between those two teams. The Cubs are still in that rebuild. They've probably the deepest rebuild in all of TLG. Them and Detroit started out with some pretty bare rosters. The early GMs made some big mistakes in Chicago, so it'll be interesting to see if they can just keep paying off with that patience. They finally have some big names coming off the books this year. They've really struggled with some veterans being really overpaid the last 4 or 5 years, and he's just been. This new GM's been really nice and patient with that, holding on. He gave a huge deal to Senzel, who had a big injury last year, so that was a huge blow to their chances after playing only 19 games. So if he can get a healthy year and be productive in third base, that should really help their chances and be a lot more competitive this year. You got Colton Wong's contract finally coming off the books after this season. He's kind of been like a replacement level player for quite a while now, so that should really help and give them a bunch of money next season. And then they have a big acquisition here in Andre Jimenez, bringing in a nice defensive middle infielder there. Should be a good, really good second baseman. Get away at shortstop there, so solid there. And then Paddock comes off the books, and so you have should have a lot of money in this offseason. Should be one more year for this kind of rebuilding squad, and then they have a ton of talent coming up. Some top prospects. Eds looks like a B starting pitcher there, big 6'8" guy with some heavy movement, heavy control, really good fastball, throws the ball hard. So excited to see if he can get some innings maybe this year at some point in September or something. Owensby is one of the most exciting prospects in baseball. Still really far off his power potential, but if he can get above that 55, 60 power rank, he should be a really fun guy to watch the next few years. So those guys just chill and develop in the minors. Weatherington, another really high draft pick. So it should be one more year kind of holding on, just trying to be patient and sticking with some young guys there, and then see if maybe they can bring up some of those young guys by the end of the year and see what they can do at the major league level. So kind of exciting when you have a bunch of top prospects like that, a bunch of former first overall picks. Really, really cool squad they've got there. So just been awesome to watch some of these smart moves and some of these patient GMs there hopefully start to pay off after all these years. Milwaukee is another team that was a heavy home run team, kind of built like Washington, where they were just all long ball for a couple years there and hit a ton of home runs. Started to age a little bit, had a really down year, had a big season out of Corey Ray the year before, 2.9 more, and then he bounced back and only hit 202. This season still had a lot of power, but just didn't make any of that contact and really lost a lot of ratings. So it'll be interesting to see if he can jump back up to those 2025 ratings. You got Bo Bichette and came over in a huge contract, led the league in batting at bats somehow 3 years in a row, which is crazy. So a ton of opportunities there to get a lot of at bats early on, hitting high up on that lineup. Yelich is still a really good player, even at the age of 35. He struggled a little bit last year, but he's a guy that can still be one of the better outfielders in baseball. Just a huge power and eye combination with some solid contact and still give you a league average corner outfield rating. Joey Gallo is a huge acquisition. Joey Gallo has some monster ratings even at the age of 33. Came over and just has the ability to just mash with that 80 power. There's only two guys in the league with 80 power. Should still be an elite home run hitter. So should be able to have a couple of those guys that had down seasons, see if they can bounce back this year. The big ones to be Corey Ray in center field. If you can get productive center field with Gallo and Yelich, big bats in the corner, that's some major power. Just missing a little bit of talent in the infield there. Could probably improve third base and shortstop a little bit. So those are a couple positions, but they're so good offensively. They should be able to score enough runs to make up for the lack of defense there. And a really, really nice heavy strikeout lineup. Some major stuff out of Kopech and Nichols. Just missing a little bit of movement. Should be struggle a little bit with home runs this year, but they have some major strikeout numbers. So be interesting to see if their pitching can perform up to a level that makes them capable of competing with St. Louis and the Pirates. I think from how I look at it right now, it's probably a clear top two tier with the Cardinals and Pirates being two of the better teams in baseball. Cincinnati's really knocking on the doorstep, though. I think they could they potentially could be right up there with those top 2 teams. Cincinnati just is so much better. They're just such a nice top 4 pitching staff with a lot of juice in that lineup. A really good defensive shortstop, just a really nice put together roster. So I think they're really close to competing with those top 2. We see if they can kind of hang with them early in the season there, and then be able to potentially squeak into the playoffs there. So exciting things on the horizon there for the Central, really improving there. And Cubs and Brewers are kind of, I think, a tier below that, but you never know. I've been wrong before. Like, I thought Houston was going to win 100 games last year, and they were on pace to win like 60. So a lot of shit can change once the season starts, and the Cubs and Brewers have a chance to overproduce. The Brewers still got a lot of really good bats in that lineup, so they're probably one of the better. Even though they're kind of rebuilding, they also have quite a bit of talent there left over. So be interesting to see how that division turns out. But if I had to put a guess on it, I'd say the Pirates and Cardinals are probably both in the mid 90s for wins, and then Cincinnati's in the high 80s. We'll see a lot can change. I'm not too confident in those ratings. That can go in any order. So really interesting division, that's for sure. That's it for this episode.